There was a time in Ireland when your name alone could decide whether you lived or died. You didn't have to commit a crime. In some of the darkest periods of Irish history, belonging to the wrong clan could mean losing your land, being driven from your home, or being marked as an enemy. Some families were hunted. Others were stripped of power, forced from lands their ancestors had held for generations, or pressured to change the names that revealed exactly who they were. And centuries later, millions of people still carry these surnames without knowing what their ancestors endured, just to keep those family names alive. Today, we're counting down 15 persecuted Irish surnames tied to families that were targeted, displaced, punished, or forced to fight for their survival. And stay with me until number 1, because its history may completely change the way you look at that surname. Before we begin, drop your surname in the comments. Let's see how many of you recognize your family name on this list. Number 15, O'Rourke. We're starting in the ancient kingdom of Briefton, in what's now County Leitrim, home of the O'Rourke clan. For centuries, the O'Rourkes ruled their territory as fierce, independent chieftains, but that independence made them a target the moment English expansion reached the west. As Elizabethan forces pushed deeper into Ireland during the 16th century, the O'Rourkes found themselves dragged into open war simply for refusing to bow to a crown that had never ruled them before. Their lands were confiscated piece by piece, their chieftain system dismantled, and their power broken alongside the other great Ulster and Connaught dynasties. Today, the O'Rourke name is common across Ireland, Britain, and the Irish diaspora. Most people carrying it have no idea it once belonged to kings. Number 14, Maguire. In County Fermanagh, the Maguires were lords of their own kingdom for over 300 years, controlling one of the most strategically important lakelands in Ulster. When the English crown launched its final campaign to break Gaelic Ulster in the late 1500s, the Maguires stood alongside the O'Neills and O'Donnells in the 9 Years' War, one of the last real attempts to stop English conquest by force. When that war was lost, Maguire territory was seized entirely and handed over to English and Scottish settlers during the plantation of Ulster. An entire ruling family erased from its own land in a single generation. The name Maguire survived. The kingdom did not. Number 13, O'Reilly. The O'Reillys ruled East Briefny, in what is now County Kavanagh, as one of the most powerful Gaelic families in Ireland. Like their neighbors, they resisted English rule for generations, and like their neighbors, they eventually paid the price. Their lands were absorbed into the Ulster plantation scheme in the early 17th century, a systematic project that confiscated native Irish territory and redistributed it to English and Scottish colonists loyal to the crown. Families who had governed their own territory for centuries were reduced almost overnight to tenants on land their ancestors once owned outright. The O'Reilly name remains one of the most common surnames in Ireland today, a quiet reminder of just how many people descend from that dispossession. Number 12. O'Connor. Long before English rule, the O'Connors were High Kings of Ireland, based in Connaught, and one of the most dominant royal families the country ever produced. That royal status made them one of the first targets when the Anglo-Norman invasion began in the 12th century, and it made them targets again centuries later during the Tudor reconquest. Branches of the O'Connor dynasty were broken up, their territories divided, and their political authority stripped away piece by piece over hundreds of years of resistance and re-subjugation. Few names in Ireland carry more lost royal weight than O'Connor, a surname that once sat on the throne and later fought simply to hold on to its own farmland. Number 11, O'Byrne. In County Wicklow, right on the doorstep of Dublin Castle, the seat of English power in Ireland, the O'Byrnes were a constant thorn in the crown's side. Their proximity to the capital made them uniquely dangerous, and English forces treated them accordingly, launching repeated military campaigns into the Wicklow Mountains to crush their resistance. Fiach McHugh O'Byrne became one of the most feared Irish rebel leaders of the late 16th century, inflicting real defeats on English forces before finally being hunted down and killed. His head was sent to Dublin and displayed as a warning to anyone else who resisted. That is the level of persecution behind a surname many people today think of as simply another common Irish family name. Number 10. O'Toole neighbors and allies of the O'Byrnes in Wicklow. The O'Tooles faced the exact same pressure from the English administration in Dublin. For centuries, they held territory that English settlers desperately wanted for its proximity to the capital, and for centuries, they refused to give it up quietly. Repeated military expeditions were launched specifically to subdue Wicklow's Gaelic clans, and O'Toole territory was steadily chipped away through confiscation, garrisoning, and forced submission. The pressure on families like the O'Tooles and O'Byrnes was so constant that historians often describe Wicklow as a permanent frontier war zone for over 100 years. If your name is O'Toole, your ancestors lived on that frontier. Number 9. MacCarthy. The MacCarthys were the dominant royal family of Munster, ruling from Cork and Kerry as kings of Desmond for centuries. Their power made them one of the primary targets of the Tudor conquest, and during the brutal Desmond rebellions of the 16th century, Munster was devastated by war and deliberate famine tactics used by English forces to starve resistance into submission. MacCarthy lands were confiscated on a massive scale and handed over to English colonists in what became known as the Munster plantation. An entire regional dynasty was dismantled, and thousands of ordinary people bearing the MacCarthy name lost everything alongside them. Number 8. O'Sullivan. Few stories capture the brutality of this period better than what happened to the O'Sullivans of Beara on the southwest coast of Ireland. After the catastrophic defeat of Irish and Spanish forces at the Battle of Kinsale in 1601, English forces moved in to crush the last pockets of Gaelic resistance in Munster. Donald Cam O'Sullivan Beare refused to surrender. When his castle at Dunboy fell, he gathered around 1,000 of his remaining people, men, women, and children, and led them on a desperate 500-kilometer march north through hostile territory in the dead of winter, hoping to reach safety in Ulster. They were hunted the entire way. Only a small fraction of that 1,000 survived to the end. It remains one of the most harrowing survival stories in Irish history, and it belongs entirely to a single surname: O'Sullivan. Number 7. O'Brien. The O'Briens descend directly from Brian Boru, the legendary High King of Ireland, and for centuries they ruled Thomond in modern County Clare as one of the country's most powerful royal lines. That royal bloodline did not protect them from the Tudor conquest. If anything, it made them a priority target, since crushing a family descended from Ireland's greatest king sent an unmistakable message to every other clan in the country. O'Brien territory was steadily absorbed into English control through a mix of forced surrender, political pressure, and outright confiscation. A dynasty that once produced high kings of all Ireland was reduced over generations to just another landowning family answering to a foreign crown. Number 6. Kavanagh and McMurrough. This name carries a particularly bitter irony. The Kavanaghs descend from the McMurrough kings of Leinster, and it was a McMurrough king, Dermot McMurrough, whose decision to invite Anglo-Norman knights into Ireland in 1169 opened the door to 700 years of English involvement in the country. His own descendants would spend the following centuries paying for that decision, fighting repeated wars to hold on to Leinster as English control expanded outward from Dublin. The Kavanaghs resisted for generations, but their territory was gradually confiscated like every other Gaelic stronghold. A family that once held the keys to the kingdom ended up fighting simply to keep a fraction of it. Number 5. Fitzgerald. The Fitzgeralds are a slightly different case. They arrived in Ireland as Anglo-Norman nobles, not native Gaelic chieftains. But over generations, the Fitzgeralds became so deeply integrated into Irish culture, language, and politics that the English crown began treating them as a threat in their own right, famously describing some of them as having become more Irish than the Irish themselves. That integration turned deadly during the Tudor period. The Fitzgeralds of Kildare were crushed after the failed rebellion of Silken Thomas in the 1530s, and the Fitzgeralds of Desmond were devastated during the later Desmond rebellions, their lands confiscated on a scale that helped trigger the Munster plantation. A family that started as English became one of the most persecuted names in Ireland, proof that once you chose Ireland, the crown stopped caring where you came from. Number 4. Burke de Burke. Like the Fitzgeralds, the Burkes began as Anglo-Norman settlers, originally de Burghs, who came to dominate huge territories in Connaught. Over time, they too became thoroughly Gaelicized, adopting Irish law, language, and customs, splitting into powerful branches like the MacWilliam Burkes. When Tudor and later Cromwellian forces moved to reassert total control over Ireland, the Burkes were treated with the same suspicion as any native Gaelic clan. Their independence and local power made them targets regardless of their Norman origins. Burke territory in Connaught became one of the key destinations during the forced Cromwellian transplantations of the 1650s, when thousands of Catholic landowners across Ireland were ordered off their land under the notorious policy that gave people a brutal choice: relocate west of the River Shannon or lose everything. Number 3, O'Malley. On the wild Atlantic coast of County Mayo, the O'Malleys built their power on the sea itself, commanding fleets and controlling trade routes along Ireland's western coastline. Their most famous descendant, Grace O'Malley, Grain Mahaol, became a legendary seafaring chieftain who defied English authority for decades, going so far as to personally negotiate with Queen Elizabeth I to protect her family's territory and titles. But even a face-to-face meeting with the Queen of England couldn't stop the long-term erosion of O'Malley power, as English administrators steadily worked to bring the independent lordships of Connaught under direct crown control in the decades that followed. The O'Malley name endures as a symbol of resistance, but it also carries the story of a family that fought the crown by land and by sea, and still eventually lost its independence. Number 2, McMahon. The McMahons ruled Oriel, in what is now County Monaghan, as one of Ulster's ruling dynasties for centuries. During the final Elizabethan conquest of Ulster, the McMahon lordship was deliberately targeted and dismantled through a legal maneuver known as surrender and re-grant, a policy that forced Gaelic lords to give up their traditional land ownership and receive it back only as a grant from the English crown, instantly converting independent rulers into crown tenants. When a McMahon chieftain resisted the terms imposed on him, English forces used the opportunity to break the clan's power entirely, seizing much of their territory and folding it into the wider colonization of Ulster. It was less dramatic than a pitched battle, but just as devastating. An entire ruling family legislated out of its own kingdom. Number 1, O'Neill. And that brings us to the name that defined Gaelic resistance to English rule more than any other in Irish history: O'Neill. For centuries, the O'Neills were the most powerful clan in Ulster, tracing their lineage back to Niall of the Nine Hostages, one of Ireland's most legendary high kings. At the height of their power, Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, led the 9 Years' War against Elizabeth I, allying with the O'Donnells and Spanish forces in the most serious military challenge to English rule Ireland had ever mounted. For years, it looked like it might actually work. Then came the catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Kinsale in 1601, and everything unraveled. In 1607, Hugh O'Neill and Rory O'Donnell, along with roughly 90 of Ireland's remaining Gaelic nobility, boarded ships and fled to mainland Europe in what is now known as the Flight of the Earls, a single event historians consider the definitive end of the old Gaelic order in Ireland. Their abandoned territory became the foundation of the plantation of Ulster, one of the largest and most consequential colonization projects in Irish history, the effects of which are still felt in Ireland's political landscape today. The persecution didn't stop with the Flight of the Earls either. In the centuries that followed, under the penal laws, being publicly, visibly Irish and Catholic carried real legal and social risk, and many O'Neill descendants quietly dropped the O from their name, becoming simply Neil, Neil, or Neil, just to make life a little safer. Some of those families only restored the O generations later, once it was finally safe to be proudly, visibly Irish again. It is, without question, one of the most persecuted and most consequential surnames in all of Irish history. So that's 15 surnames, 15 families, and centuries of a crown trying and ultimately failing to erase Irish identity. If you saw your name on this list, you're not just carrying a family name, you're carrying survival. Let me know in the comments which surname surprised you the most. And if you want part 2 covering 15 more persecuted Irish surnames, smash that like button so I know to make it. Subscribe if you want more real Irish history like this. I'll see you in the next one.